I'm back again, and this time we're doing the business and other AI news or things we can see on the thing or whatever we call it.
Of AI and creating proactive, customer-centric solutions, the metrics that matter the most for tracking success, and the delicate balance between automation and the human touch. Brett also explores how CVS is leveraging customer data to improve loyalty and deliver hyper-personalized services while maintaining trust and privacy. Without further ado, here's our conversation. Brett, thanks so much for being with us on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Matt. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We haven't had a lot of executives from CVS Health, but it's always a great day between Dan and I. We're both native Rhode Islanders. I'm from Lincoln, which is just a stone's throw from your corporate headquarters. But as I was saying, even off microphone, besides that nice little trivia point, it's great to be talking with somebody from the CVS organization. We have an audience that spans across industries. You have a lot of different kinds of customers coming through CVS's doors. You're working in pharmaceuticals, you're working in a lot of retail spaces. So just from that vantage point, that very overhead, what are we looking at in terms of challenges when it comes to customer experiences in these different kinds of retail interactions?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So I've been with CVS for 20 years. 17 years of that was in retail, running the stores, and then 4 years in the corporate environment with the customer experience program. And you can see a changing environment from what our customers want. And right now, expectations are high. We see expectations around 24/7 access to solutions. People want the communication, the style that they want it, the way they want it, whether it's chat, text, email, phone call. Our patients are getting more and more frustrated with the old technology, having to call if they don't want to. Inconsistent messaging comes up quite a bit. There's all these different channels. We need to make sure that we have the same message. And then there's just our competitors, or not even competitors, just other businesses out there doing some really interesting work. Our customers see that and say, hey, why don't you have that? So we have to keep raising the bar all the time.
Lots of different challenges there. I think everybody talks about competition in a vacuum, but I haven't heard from anybody probably outside of our friends in the financial space about that competition visibility and that constant comparison. It sounds like you're dealing with a lot of, shall we say, some stiff attitudes out there. And that's largely driven by a lot of the competition. You also talked about multi-modes, different channels at which you're getting a lot of this feedback. How are you thinking about just overall voice of the customer between where they're directly messaging you about your products and services and where you're getting these signals of such strong comparison to your competition?
Yeah, there's so much data out there. I talk to a lot of people inside the industry, and we all have similar problems. There's data everywhere. There's perspectives on social media. There's surveys that our patients will fill out. There's information that we have internally. It's almost overwhelming how much you have. And now we use Net Promoter Score. So that's how we survey our patients. They score us, and then we can track that. We can track our improvement. And what we've seen with these changing environments is they'll go to a non-regulated, we're heavily regulated in finance and healthcare. We're super regulated. Other industries that aren't at all, they can be really fast. They can do some really interesting things that we can't do quite yet. And so that's where we see our non-competitors really influencing our own customers.
Very interesting stuff. Now, even as you're trying to drink in the data about their customers as they're going about the journey tends to have 3 points for a lot of folks in these retail and even pharmaceutical spaces. Where we're dealing with in person, it gets a little different. But in terms of that automated experience, it's a bot, and then they're put on hold, and then they're finding a human customer. And obviously, this will range a little bit differently in terms of real life interactions and brick and mortar. But just looking at that kind of automated digital space interaction, just for a moment, how do different retail leaders, how are they thinking about friction, especially in these digital environments where we see just because they're digital, the silos are coming down, the walls are coming down, and we get sometimes the false impression that the friction's coming down too, whether or not that's the case. How are you looking at that?
When I think about this whole digital environment that we're in right here, there's this balance of how do we be efficient in the way that they want the information. So if you want to start with the app, can you end with the app? Or then do you have to go into a virtual chat? And then if you go from a virtual chat, then you have to go to a phone call. So what is this evolution? And then what happens a lot of times is you start in one spot can't finish, go to the next one, have to start over. Then you go to the next one, you have to start over again. And a lot of our work now is taking this journey from end to end and how do we make it as seamless as possible? So you're not starting over each time. So the information is transferred so that as the issue is escalated, it's actually resolved at the same time.
Right. So not just interloping all of those different systems to catch the ball as it's falling between the person calling customer service, the person reaching out another way. Maybe they're starting to scream at the Twitter page. Maybe that's a little old. I don't know what the kids scream at anymore. Maybe you got a TikTok that's getting a lot of action, but you're getting feedback in another way. And how do you track all of those interactions? Honestly, I hear a similar problem from our friends in KYC, in our friends, not to make too stiff a comparison, but KYC in financial services, which is knowing your customer for anti-money laundering purposes, making sure that their transactions are authentic. But the problem's the same. They're tracking transactions over Facebook messengers in different formats, hell, whiteboards, and they need to be responsible for that data when it comes to a lot of their compliance surface area. Much different in retail, much different for CVS. But you also have, and I've been layering this in since the intro, but you also have the pharmaceutical element, which means you're not without your broad regulatory space as well. In terms of that friction and the immense amount of effort you're putting into tracking that conversation over these modalities, over these channels, how are we seeing the technology squeeze between the regulatory surface, which will inevitably bring more friction, and be able to automate what's necessary in there to really maintain the customer experience?
Yeah, so it's navigating the changing regulatory environment for sure. It's also navigating change in general. It's scary to do something new. And it's also navigating the cost of doing it. Where's the ROI? And each of these plays into how do we make these decisions coming up. From a regulatory environment, there's a lot of things that AI solutions will do even better. From a quality environment, it'll do better. But there's still this trust factor that a person looking at it will be just more trustworthy. That's how we're at.
Yeah. And I'm sure like even a lot of those systems, we're looking at our friends in banking, seeing what works in terms of anomaly detection, driving it where it makes sense in the retail space for not just assuring that the customer experiences are authentic and in high quality, but also that, they're not fraudulent or anything else. Just in that way too. And we hear a lot about this from our other friends in retail. There's a lot of use cases where personalization gets done kind of along the way because you're already drinking a lot of that data about the customer. What metrics are you driving just on the customer experience side that have that crossover to other parts of the business, be it security, be it anything else, where you can really start to do two things at once if you're leveraging the right technology?
So there's so many good topics you just brought up right there. This balance of I know, right? Where do you start? The personalization, the efficiency, the KPIs. We seem like we have metrics for everything, which is a good thing. What gets measured gets done. We do use Net Promoter Score as our guiding North Star, and then there's many drivers off of that. And what I'm really proud of, and how we've done this in a very nice way, is instead of just picking arbitrary drivers, this is where we've really used what matters most to our regulatory environment, what matters most to client retention, what matters most to our patient satisfaction. And those are the drivers that we focus on improving through operations and all of our other strategies.
Do those metrics have a specific name? If I'm not getting too close to any secret sauce here, but just how are you thinking about those? Do those have like concrete figures or variables that you're measuring month to month?
Well, I'll give you, not really. I mean, I don't know, the KPIs, the key performance metrics, whatever you want to call them is what you can call them. But here's what I'll say is different. In a lot of call centers, they look at average handle time and say, if I can drive that down, I must be doing better because I'm solving problems faster. But the reality is you can have a very fast average handle time if you just pick up the phone and hang up on somebody. That's not a very good experience.
Right.
So having the right KPIs is really important.
Right, being able to factor that in there. Hence why I was asking in a lot of ways, especially where you have different healthcare or pharmaceutical workflows, because in many of those cases, a much longer conversation can be a very good sign rather than not. Context is everything. Just even in that way, we're drowning in data, as you were saying before, which means we could be drowning in context. How do you think about data governance in that way to just make sure that you always have enough information to know you're not barking up the wrong tree in different kinds of metrics? I think you were alluding a little bit to that problem in your last answer.
Yeah, this was a huge initiative last year and this year. We're shifting from being reactive, somebody complains and then we handle the complaint, to being proactive. And to do that, we've taken demographic data, we've taken interaction data, we've taken social media, as well as survey data, and put these together in a way that we can actually weight out, almost like a menu, big menu of here's all these characteristics, and these matter the most and these matter the least. And that's been huge for all of our operations.
In those characteristics, does that go to a marketing persona, or does that go to kind of like the different segmentation that you're getting from the different customer interactions you have, somewhere in between maybe?
Yeah, here's a perfect example. Where you live in the country, it matters to whether you're going to be happy with us or not. But it doesn't matter as much as if we got your life-saving medication to you on the day you were expecting it. That matters way more. So once we have these metrics that matter, then we can go to the marketing team and say, focus your efforts showing how we're better here. We can go to operations and say, focus your efforts on improving these because it has the biggest ROI.
Absolutely. Makes a ton of sense. Really appreciate the transparency in kind of showing us a little bit of where CVS is in terms of that journey we hear so much about, moving from reactive to proactive. In that way, I was bringing up friction before, but I'm curious whether in that transition from reactive to proactive, that becomes a little bit more about customer effort, but also customer effort in the right context. Just like we were saying as I was asking the question in between the last two answers about how in some contexts, especially healthcare, a longer call may be a better sign. How are you thinking about that differentiation, and how is data becoming part of that journey as we make the transition from reactive to proactive?
All right. One of the biggest things that we can do when you call us is to solve your problem on that call. Not having to transfer you, not having to put you on hold, not having to have you call back. So spending that extra time, making sure that you have all the information. This is where data comes in, not just about the thing that you called about, but the other thing that you're going to call us about a week from now. And can we handle that right now on the call? Cost a little bit more. I would say the cost on it is a little bit more. However, what we found in just small pilots is the ROI is positive almost immediately.
It's the bang worth the buck, which is always a very important distinction to make about the specific AI capabilities involved, especially because we're at that point of the hype cycle where it cures everything, including cancer, and it costs nothing. And no. Read the fine print. But even in those ways, like in terms of that ROI, I'm sure you're seeing it not just in terms of the specific workflow, making that process more proactive, but also where that means more efficiencies, more data driving to the company. I think what a lot of the ROI that gets lost is you're putting these systems in place is now we're able to drink that all in. Soon we'll be able to get enough insights to know all that we should drink in and not a single terabyte more or even a gigabyte more, but even from there, making the overall process more efficient. At that point where you start to get more proactive, then the use cases, the value is just right there. Where are we seeing the value trickle out even beyond the upsell opportunities that you mentioned to different parts of the business from the data that we're drinking in?
Yeah. So we can see this from a marketing standpoint, from a social media standpoint, from what people are posting, what people are saying, the messages that they're delivering. If you have a problem and you call us and we were able to solve that problem and we were able to solve the problem in the future, or, and here's another really good one, let's say you don't have a problem at all. But I just call you and I say, I really value you as a customer. You're really amazing. We're going to put $10 on your account. And I just want to thank you for your business. Now, this generates loyalty. It generates repeat business. It'll generate some nice viral messaging out there. So it all ties together, which wouldn't happen if it was all reactive, wait till there's a problem and solve it.
Right. Really shows how a lot of these spaces have gone from, even when we thought of them a couple years ago, and this I'm almost quoting only from one of our banking friends, so don't worry, retail didn't say this, but they would always say, hey, you go back 20 years, everybody felt it. Everybody knew this was worse than the DMV. This is where customer problems went to die, the banking customer service. And I think even in the last few years, not just banking, but retail as well, has seen this turn into the battleground where they're going to win or lose versus their competition. And also where they're going to use this as a trampoline to transform their.
Yeah, they're talking about AI and other artificial intelligence, and they're saying that that if you don't learn it, you might get behind, or don't learn the AI, or you know what I mean. So it's useful to learn the new technology and get in advance with others. All this is good, all this is good, all this is good. Nothing to worry about, listen and reply. Come on. Why does it always do that? Why does it do that? Is it normal like that, or why? How does it do that? No, Pollo, down the cow. How's it? I'm out. Out. How does it do that? Before we didn't do that. It's got to do it to every single one. Cancel download. It's downloading to where? You can't be downloading it. Play.
This media is brought to you by Polyscope.
Gen Z gives up search engines.
Plus, is the UK being run by AI? Good morning, I'm Cassie Bishop.
And I'm Ray Turing. This is AI Daily for Monday, April 28th, 2025.
Breaking news in AI, handpicked for the curious mind.
Gen Z is over search engines. AI shopping tools are taking over.
More people are ditching Google for AI shopping assistants, and Gen Z is leading the charge. Over half of shoppers now use Gen AI tools to find stuff faster and get better recs. Retailers are hyped, but early users say the tech still needs work. Welcome to the next Gen Mall crawl.
Is Keir Starmer getting AI advice? The UK is not saying.
Thousands of UK civil servants, including some close to PM Keir Starmer, are using a secret AI tool called Redbox. The government won't confirm if AI written advice reaches the top, and won't release Redbox chat logs either. Experts warn the lack of transparency could hide bias, bad info, and shady decision-making.
The Middle East is now the world's
You get this. You go like this. Just recording it. CC, you gotta get CC. AI chat. That's C1. This one here you gotta get. I don't use it, but enable, uninstall. The CC your AI assistant. This is off card, whatever you want to call it. You can manage the settings. The settings is pretty easy. I don't use it. I don't worry about it, but it's pretty easy. You can say something like, "Can you get me a app with a TV or write me a poem or I love you so much or whatever you want. Or search in the internet, wouldn't it? Okay. So why are they saying all these other ones for? Oh, okay, the Gen 9. Gen 9. I don't know if you have to pay for this one, don't you? Gen 9. But there you go, you can get all this to search for you whatever you want. Google Assistant. Google Assistant. Enable. Esto, enable. Open. Open. What do you do? Ask Gen 9. Google Assistant. But I don't do that. What happened?
Hi, I'm Gemini. We're about to go live, where you can explore complex topics or ideas just by talking. But before we get started, take a quick look at this important information.
See, this is where. See.
Awesome. Let's get started. Here's one of the voices I have, but there are more to choose. You can always change my voice in settings later. All right, ready when you are.
Google Assistant.
네, 혹시 저에게 궁금한 점이 있으신가요?
¿Hablas español?
Sí, ¿cómo puedo ayudarte?
¿Cómo puedo ayudarte?
Puedo ayudarte a encontrar información sobre un tema, traducir algo, o podemos tener una conversación. ¿Qué te gustaría hacer?
¿Me puedes ayudar a hablar español?
Por supuesto. ¿Qué tipo de ayuda necesitas? ¿Quieres practicar conversación, aprender vocabulario nuevo o algo más?
¿Cuál es la noticia de Alex Sánchez?
Alexis Sánchez volvió a Udinese. Firmó contrato por 2 años con el equipo. ¿Quieres saber más sobre su regreso?
Sí, por favor.
Alexis Sánchez regresa al Udinese. El club italiano está muy contento de tenerlo de vuelta. Alexis jugó aquí hace años y dejó una gran impresión. Es un jugador muy querido por la afición. ¿Quieres saber más sobre su carrera?
Can you take me to Google Search?
Claro, ¿qué quieres buscar en Google?
News, the Trump.
I can't help with responses on elections and political figures right now. While I would never deliberately share something that's inaccurate, I can make mistakes. So while I work on improving, you can try Google search.
Okay, what? Whoa. You hear it? On my TV, you went, whoa. On my computer, went, whoa. It's like my phone is connected to my TV, hey. No, no. Anyway, we don't want you. We want is this one. This one. Don't worry about it. They said there was a floating camera, but there wasn't. Okay, I'm fucking around, fart assing around. Keeps doing that. Press the wrong button. Ah, you're so pathetic. You're so pathetic. You're so pathetic. Pathetic. Pathetic you are. Now you're working, you pathetic. Why did you do that? Don't you go do that?
Laws with laws I Google search. Featured snippet from the web. On Monday.
Monday, a practice note issued by the NSW Supreme Court put limits on the use of generative AI by lawyers, including stipulating it must not be used to generate affidavits, witness statements, character references, or other material tendered in evidence or used in cross-examination. 10 February 2025. https://www.theguardian.com. 5th March 2025. Exaggerating AI capabilities to attract investment and market interest can lead to liability for misleading conduct under existing laws. 21 key moments in this video. First court decision in an AI lawsuit. Law platform, used for copyright infringement over adapted headlines. Court.
I don't know how it works, but I've seen that one or two were in the market and using AI to uprate the market, or when was good to be in the market or whatever, because the news was market news or something.
Court denies fair use defense. Draft a lawsuit in 2 minutes, using the .law, upload plaintiff's story, specify claims, add details about parties, and click generate document. 22nd September 2024. If AA is to play an important role in litigation, tribunal work, then the owner of that AA is likely to be government. It will need expertise and resources. 6 May 2024. The use of AI programs by a party must not indirectly mislead another participant in the litigation process, including the court, as to the nature of any work. 7th March 2025. California courts saw several lawsuits related to generative AI brought under the state's wiretapping law. The California Invasion of Privacy Act (CIPA). 3rd January 2025. This insight reviews all of the laws, regulations, guidance documents.
Oh, it's taking forever now. I'm going quick as possible.
Liability for harms from AI systems, the application of U.S. tort law and liability to harms from artificial intelligence systems RAND. Photo by Getty Images /HH 5800. Key takeaways. Absent new law from Congress or state legislatures, tort law will be applied to harms caused by artificial intelligence AI when such cases are brought in court. Tort law is a form of common law, meaning that it has been formed primarily by judges ruling on specific cases and developing precedent to apply to future cases. In the United States, tort law is primarily state law and can vary from state to state. Therefore, the specific tort law applied to AI will differ depending on which state's law is applied, with potentially large differences in how cases are adjudicated and how each state's tort law develops over time. Many AI-related tort cases will involve claims of negligence, a claim that a party did not act with due care, by harmed plaintiffs against AI developers and deployers. Courts could find it difficult to apply negligence law to AI because of the complexities of AI development and the AI supply chain between AI developers and deployers, both of which could make it difficult to identify negligent behavior and the party responsible for an alleged harm. When deciding whether an AI company acted negligently, courts might look to industry AI standards and to the customs in place for developing and deploying AI to determine what reasonable safety measures for AI look like. Plaintiffs also might bring cases alleging that products involving AI are defective. These cases would be decided under specialized.
How does AI in your company works if you are selling computers or you're selling information like MP3s or music or programs or other tools like editing for videos or other tools? How do we combine every combinations together to AI to stop taking our information?
Specialized products liability law. It is unclear whether courts will define AI as a product, and different products liability tests could lead to very different analyses of whether an AI is truly defective as required to proceed with the case under these doctrines. The application of tort law to AI might involve the First Amendment, particularly for AI use cases that involve speech. In such cases, it might be more difficult for plaintiffs to win in court against AI developers. The advent of new, powerful art.
You might have to pay so you can rub off your name and delete all the information at the end of it. You might have to pay, and you will have to pay, and you might have to pay.
Artificial intelligence AI systems has prompted a burst of interest in how best to govern AI. Although software and AI have existed for many years, new AI technologies, such as generative AI, with increasingly broad capabilities have recently been introduced, such as OpenAI's ChatGPT and Anthropic's Claude. These developments have increased interest in AI governance and in understanding existing laws' application to this technology. When there is interest in how existing rules of liability might apply to these new AI systems too. This report provides a brief overview of some of the key issues at the intersection of advanced AI systems and U.S. tort law. This report, which focuses on AI's effects on U.S. tort law, is not intended to provide a comprehensive analysis, but rather.
Okay.
Fake cases, judges' headaches and new limits. Australian courts grapple with lawyers using AI law. Australia. The Guardian. The lawyer had a back injury and was short on time. Submissions were due in an immigration case, where he was representing someone in an appeal against a decision by the minister. He had heard about the use of artificial intelligence in legal work and logged into ChatGPT, inserting some words relevant to the case to prepare a summary of cases. He thought the summary read well, so he incorporated the details and references into the submissions without checking the details. Then, about 2 weeks later, the immigration minister's outline of submissions highlighted 17 cases cited in the applicant's documents that did not exist. The lawyer was deeply embarrassed and apologetic when this was brought before the federal court last year. But the minister took the strong view, reflected in the subsequent Federal Circuit and Family Court ruling, that generative AI use was of concern to the public, and so, it was important to set an example and nip in the bud lawyers using generative AI without checking their work. The court referred the matter to the New South Wales Legal Services Commissioner for review. As AI grows in popularity in some industries, the full extent of its use in the legal profession is unknown. The media company Thomson Reuters, which offers its own AI software to lawyers, surveyed 869 private practice professionals in Australia last year. It suggested 40% worked at firms that were experimenting with the use of AI, but proceeding with caution. Sign up for Guardian Australia's breaking news email. The results suggested 9% of lawyers were actively using AI in daily operations. Nearly 1 in 3 said they would like a generative AI legal assistant. Correct and ethical use. In a case last year, a Melbourne lawyer was referred to the Victorian Legal Complaints Body after admitting using AI software in a family court case that generated false case citations and caused a hearing to be adjourned. The solicitor, representing a husband in a dispute between a married couple, provided the court with a list of prior cases that had been requested by the judge. Neither the judge nor her associates were able to identify the cases in the list. When the matter returned to court, the lawyer confirmed the list had been prepared using the legal software Leap, which has a generative AI component. Leap specifically allows legal practitioners to check the work output by the AI, but the lawyer did not do this in this instance when the technology hallucinated citations. Christian Beck, Leap's chief executive, says lawyers around the world are beginning to adopt AI technology. At Leap, we encourage the correct and ethical use of our integrated AI products and have implemented a range of mitigation, education and professional development measures as part of our service offering, Beck says. Lawyer provides users with a free lawyer verification process that is underpinned by experienced, local lawyers. We also take confidentiality incredibly seriously by deploying technology that is not used to train large language models, avoiding the risk of exposure of confidential material. It's not just lawyers being criticized for their use of AI. Those providing affidavits to courts, or people representing themselves, are of concern to judges. In one case last year, an offender tendered a personal reference from his brother, which the Australian Capital Territory Supreme Court said strongly suggested it was written by a large language model, such as ChatGPT. There was a statement in the brother's affidavit that said he had known his brother both personally and professionally for an extended period, which the court suggested cast doubt on whether the brother had prepared it himself. And in a decision by the Victorian Court of Appeal regarding the dismissal of a student by a university, it was noted that some documents filed by the applicant contain some case citations to cases that do not exist. I have not reproduced those citations, lest they contribute to the problem of LLM large language model, AI inventing case citations, Justice Kristen Walker said. Last month, an expert witness called by the Minnesota Attorney General to speak about misinformation was rebuked after he was found to have used fake article citations generated by AI to support the state's arguments. Still early days. So far, there haven't been more than a handful of complaints to the various state bodies that oversee lawyers in Australia. I think this is an AI literacy problem, as much as a Slack solicitor. So far, there haven't been more than a handful of complaints to the various state bodies that oversee lawyers in Australia. I think this is an AI literacy problem, as much as a Slack solicitor problem. It is still early days and we do anticipate we may receive more complaints as the use of generative AI becomes more commonplace, a spokesperson for the NSW Legal Services Commissioner said. The Queensland Legal Services Commissioner, Megan Mahon, says technology is changing the way the public engages with lawyers. A self-help approach is one thing, but ensuring AI does not further enable unlawful and unqualified delivery of legal services is of great concern, Mahon says. It is therefore critically important that anyone seeking legal advice ensures they are engaging with a qualified and licensed legal practitioner. On Monday, a practice note issued by the NSW Supreme Court put limits on the use of generative AI by lawyers, including stipulating it must not be used to generate affidavits, witness statements, character references, or other material tendered in evidence or used in cross-examination. Jeannie Patterson, a professor of law and the director of the Centre for AI and Digital Ethics at the University of Melbourne, says the errors may be seen from lawyers with fewer resources or experience, and that it shows the need for lawyers to be trained on use of AI. I think this is an AI literacy problem, as much as a Slack solicitor problem, she says. Train people in where it is useful, because once you start using it in a conscious way, you realize it's actually not good at these sorts of things. Our legal system is going to implode if we don't have that sort of literacy. The Victorian Legal Services Board has identified lawyers' improper use of AI as a key risk. It's important for lawyers to remember that it's their duty to provide accurate legal information, not the duty of an AI program, a spokesperson said. Unlike a professionally trained lawyer, AI can't exercise superior judgment or provide ethical and confidential services.
Shit.
EU microchip strategy deeply disconnected from reality, say official auditors technology sector The Guardian. The EU's strategy to secure its own supply of microchips is deeply disconnected from reality. A damning report by the official European Court of Auditors ECA has found. The ECA reported that the bloc was very unlikely to meet its 2030 target of supplying 20% of the world's microchips at a time when global demand for semiconductor. The ECA reported that the bloc was very unlikely to meet its 2030 target of supplying 20% of the world's microchips at a time when global demand for semiconductors is booming to meet the growing needs of defense, green tech, and artificial intelligence. With Donald Trump threatening to impose tariffs on chips imported to the US, there is also potential for collapse of supply chains, the ECA said, making the EU more vulnerable, despite tech multinationals such as California's Intel and South Korea's Samsung having bases in Europe. The EU urgently needs a reality check in its strategy for the microchip sector, said Anne Turtleboom, who was in charge of the ECA audit. A European Commission paper in 2022 set out the bloc's ambition to take a 20% share of the chip market, a share reflecting the percentage of global end users located in Europe. However, the ECA's report found that target was essentially aspirational, and investment goals were hindered by the bloc's financial muscle being too fragmented across different schemes and tax regimes. We are making promises that are deeply disconnected from reality, Turtleboom told reporters at the launch of the report. We are competing in a global race, but from the back of the field, and it is unclear whether we have the means to be successful in this race or the competencies to support the industry, and the funding we have available is fragmented and scattered. Microchip shortages can cause huge problems for industry. The report noted that in the pandemic's wake, a lack of microchips for German car makers caused production to collapse to 1975 levels. They are present in everything, and are becoming only more so with time, Turtleboom said. In a modern car, there are about 1,500 microchips. By 2030, this number is expected to rise to 3,000. Brussels announced a CHIPS Act in 2022 to reduce the US reliance on foreign states for supplies of critical components. The resulting regulation came into force in 2023. Is it worrying? We know that other continents, China, the US, Taiwan, and South Korea, they are not sitting still, Turtleboom added. China is expected to overtake Taiwan as the world's biggest manufacturer of chips in 2030 with 22% of the market, according to the ECA. The EU is forecast to manufacture just 8% on its own soil by then, and would have to quadruple its production capacity to meet a 20% target. The ECA found that the CHIPS Act did provide new impetus to manufacturing, and that the funding provided by the European Commission was aligned to the bloc's strategy. However, it said that the act was prepared in urgency and the Commission had no mandate to coordinate national investments and all funding streams. It added that tax breaks needed to be closely monitored with a view to increasing investment. The EU's ambition when the CHIPS Act came into force was to mobilize €86 billion, 73 billion, in investment by 2030. But this is eclipsed by the sums being spent by the likes of Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing company TSMC, Samsung, and Intel. These top players budgeted $425 billion, 361 billion, for investment in just 3 years between 2020 and 2023, and only one, TSMC, had significant plans to invest in the EU. Intel, which already has manufacturing facilities in Ireland, had planned to pour €30 billion into a mega plant in Magdeburg, Germany, with backing of almost €10 billion from the German government, but postponed construction last September. The postponement was a big blow to the EU that highlighted the effects of the sector being concentrated in so few hands. There are a limited amount of players who receive a lot of funding, which means if one project drops, it has a huge impact on the 20% targets, Turtleboom said. A European Commission spokesperson said the CHIPS Act had catalyzed funding of €80 billion and laid a strong foundation in consolidating Europe's position in the global semiconductor market after 2 decades of decline, and put Europe back on the path of growth. Commissioner calls for ban on apps that make deepfake nude images of children, The Guardian. Artificial intelligence nudification apps that create deepfake sexual images of children should be immediately banned. Amid growing fears among teenage girls that they could fall victim, the Children's Commissioner formed these warning. Girls said they were stopping posting images of themselves on social media out of a fear that generative AI tools could be used to digitally remove their clothes or sexualize them, according to the Commissioner's report on the tools.
Yes, they were going to say, or whatever was to say, in, the girls and the blokes. I was looking at. Can't remember the show that I was watching it, and it was disturbing. It was bad. Anyway, they're not like that. They're not rich, famous, all muscle, all good looking. Get your knickers on a knot, mate. Get out of it.
Tools, drawing on children's experiences. Although it is illegal to create or share a sexually explicit image of a child, the technology enabling them remains legal, the report noted. Children have told me they are frightened by the very idea of this technology, even being available, let alone used. They fear that anyone, a stranger, a classmate, or even a friend could use a smartphone as a way of manipulating them by creating a naked image using these bespoke apps, the Commissioner, Dame Rachel D'Souza, said. The online world is revolutionary and quickly evolving, but there is no positive reason for these particular apps to exist. They have no place in our society. Tools using deepfake technology to create naked images of children should not be legal, and I'm calling on the government to take decisive action to ban them, instead of allowing them to go unchecked with extreme real-world consequences. D'Souza urged the government to introduce an AI bill that would require developers of GenAI tools to address the risks their products pose, and to roll out effective systems to remove sexually explicit deepfake images of children. This should be underpinned by policy making that recognizes deepfake sexual abuse as a form of violence against women and girls, she suggested. In the meantime, the report urges Ofcom to ensure that age verification on nudification apps is properly enforced and that social media platforms prevent sexually explicit deepfake tools being promoted to children, in line with the Online Safety Act. The report cited a 2025 survey by Girl Guiding, which found that 26% of respondents aged 13 to 18 had seen a sexually explicit deepfake image of a celebrity, a friend, a teacher, or themselves. Many AI tools appear to only work on female bodies, which the report warned is fueling a growing culture of misogyny. One 18-year-old girl told the Commissioner, the narrative of Andrew Tate and influencers like that, backed by a quite violent and becoming more influential porn industry, is making it seem that AA is something that you can use so that you can always pressure people into going out with you or doing sexual acts with you. The report noted that there is a link between deepfake abuse and suicidal ideation and PTSD, for example in the case of Mia Janin, who died by suicide in March 2021. D'Souza wrote in the report that the new technology confronts children with concepts they cannot yet understand, and is changing at such scale and speed that it can be overwhelming to try and get a grip on the danger they present. Lawyers told The Guardian that they were seeing this reflected in an increase in cases of teenage boys getting arrested for sexual offenses because they did not understand the consequences of what they were doing, for example experimenting with deepfakes, being in a WhatsApp chat where explicit images are circulating, or looking up.
Shut up. Get out of it. Knock it out, man. I'm not into that shit. Fake fucking.
Moral panic about new media's influence on young voters underplays their interest in politics, creators say Australian election, 2025 The Guardian. Young Australian voters do actually care about politics and current affairs, Conrad Benjamin tells Guardian Australia. Aussie punters are not disengaged, he says. Most of the corporate media and politicians just refuse to talk about the big, systemic things that are broken, and how we can fix them. The creator behind Punters Politics, with 400,000 followers on Instagram, is a popular source of information in the lead up to the federal election. According to responses to The Guardian Australia Young Voter Call-Out, he is one of a lineup of independent commentators and journalists creating content on platforms such as Instagram, YouTube, TikTok and Twitch that people told us they are turning to for political information. While most respondents to our call-out indicated they rely on a mix of social media and traditional media for news, influencers and experts have observed a moral panic about the increase in young online creators engaging in politics. For at least 20 years, young people have been moving away from formal politics, such as joining a political party or a volunteering organization, and towards issues-based politics, says Prof. Philippa Collin from Western Sydney University. Collin researches the role of the internet in the political lives of young people. It's pretty common that it has been interpreted as young people not being interested or involved in civic engagement or political participation, she says. But research points to an increase in participatory politics, where young people feel a responsibility to do something about the issues that they see in the world, or that affect them directly, Collin says. Sign up for the Afternoon Update, Election 2025 email newsletter. They want to have more of a say, and to influence the world around them. They are facing a lot of really big issues, which they haven't played any part in creating. Think about the housing crisis, or the climate crisis, or various conflicts, or the general state of the economy. At the same time, young voters have grown up with the internet. Legacy media organizations are increasingly crafting and distributing media in new formats on new platforms, but there are already young creators on those platforms dedicated to particular issues, whether that be groups with a particular focus, such as sustainability and climate, or citizen journalists who perhaps don't even have a journalism background, but become important educators, Collin says. Who is influencing young people, and what is their reach? Hannah Ferguson and her independent news commentary Pagic, MediaCone podcast Big Small Talk were collectively mentioned more than any other independent social media creators by people who responded to our call-out. Her Instagram pages have a total of 271,200 followers. Cheek Media co-publishes short reels on politics that attract tens to hundreds of thousands of views. One reel from January that breaks down opposition leader Peter Dutton's voting history on key issues, such as housing affordability and HECS indexation, racked up 1.2 meters views, more than 40,000 likes and thousands of comments. Ferguson, who has recently interviewed Anthony Albanese and Adam Band, was one of a dozen content creators invited to the 2025 federal budget lookup, a move that was criticized by politicians and traditional media organizations. Benjamin's Punters Politics, Jordan Shanks aka Friendly Geordies, and Juice Media were also frequently named by respondents.
Oh, yeah, Jordan.
Along with his Instagram page,
Jordan.
Benjamin has almost
Jordan.
140,000 subscribers on
Shut
YouTube.
up. Oh, that cuts it out, and you will know the name now, buddy. Jordan. Him. How? This guy. No, but no. No. Bet you got it wrong. Okay. He was on it the other day. I was watching him for a little bit. Why is it going so slow, eh? Oh, maybe I did. Anyway, what are we kidding about? got so many videos, eh? Just play a little bit of one.
Dude, check these stats out. I mean, you could literally do it. You could Google it yourself, but give me the click.
A better you starts today.
How's this? You'll never guess. I've got some more damning quotes to give you about Gen Z and how much they suck. And here's the first one. How's this? Nearly a third of them, nearly 1/3, if you ask them, do you have low self-esteem, they'll go, is constantly screaming at you, constantly pointing out your errors. And that's why when you...
Oh, yeah. Say you're from Africa, India, America, Chile, or other country, and people might say, what is he talking about? I never understood him. But while you research, you do your research, what he's talking about, do your research, and it's mainly for Australian people, and you go, wow, I never heard of this. And he's saying in here in the news or over there, it's facts, he's saying facts. He's very popular Australian bloke, you know what I mean? Like, he would never give up his day job, or he's promoted. You don't know what he's talking about. That's right, because you're from India, Africa, or Canada, America, Chile, Argentina. You wouldn't know what he's talking about, but if you listen to it a little bit and then go and Google whatever he's talking about, Google it, or whatever you need to do to get the facts together, he's fucking mad. He's sick, man. He's fully sick. He's on to it all the time.
And I want you to write this down. Those shortcomings don't define me. You make those the biggest part of your identity. And if anybody ever calls them out, you snap. That's when you know that you have a weak point that can be pressed. And there's people in the world that will try and find those weak points out deliberately. And dude, check these stats out. I mean, you
now. See, that's how he talks.
Hey, have you ever wondered why some people are very good at keeping a conversation going, and 4-foot-tall ginger chick, you know, that chick has that attitude because she basically sees everybody that she meets as a family member. Just an extended one at a Christmas party, extremely comfortable. Like I'm imagining that you are, unless you have extremely bad social problems, and then I can't really help you, mate. You're on your own.
Okay.
Then the next one is...
You gotta go to his channel. His name is Jordan Shanks. Jordan Shanks. Okay. See you later.